So verse 1 of Daniel 4 says, Nebuchadnezzar the king, to all peoples, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth. So, like I have said, I think in the first chapter, the book of Daniel is the book that has the most Aramaic within it. The rest of the scriptures are written in Hebrew, except for Daniel, which has pretty much like half of the book written in Aramaic. So this is one of those chapters. It goes from the half of the second chapter till chapter 7, as we saw when we were reading that chapter. So pretty much the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh, plus part of the second, are written in Aramaic. And not only that, but this chapter is written by Nebuchadnezzar. So Yahweh allowed a writing from this king to be part of scriptures, which shows that he repented and Yahweh accepted him, and that is why his writing is part of the scriptures. So this is a very interesting thing, I believe, for a king who is a Gentile to have a whole chapter being part of scriptures. Once again, in Aramaic, and the reason we actually are going to see it in the chapter itself, that is why it is part of the whole book of Daniel, because Nebuchadnezzar was a king who was wicked, yet at the end he realized that Yahweh is the only mighty one, and he repented and Yahweh accepted him. So Nebuchadnezzar wrote this chapter to explain that whole story. As we read in the previous chapter, Daniel, he wasn't there for the whole chapter, but in Daniel 3 we see how his three friends are thrown in the fire, yet Yahweh saves them. We saw how in chapter 2 Daniel interpreted a dream that Nebuchadnezzar had. So in chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar has the dream. Yahweh shows him what would happen from his time till the end of times through a statue, an image whose head was Babylon, a head of gold, which represented Nebuchadnezzar. So when Daniel interpreted the whole dream to the king should have accepted it and he should have been glad for getting the message, for the interpretation, for having Daniel as an advisor, and many other things. Yet what he did instead, or also, was to create a statue of himself, an image of himself, which is what we read in chapter 3. After the interpretation given by Daniel of the statue that he dreamt, Nebuchadnezzar goes on and makes an image, a statue of himself, for it to be worshipped, for him to be worshipped through that image. So that was a representation of how the beast of the book of Revelation 13, through the second beast, will create an image for Satan to enter it, and the first motivation of making that image will be for the beast to be worshipped, just like Nebuchadnezzar was hoping to be worshipped, and also one of the main reasons, to be able to fool the whole world into worshiping an image of the beast, an idol, and through that idol, which they believe they will be able to control, get to control the whole world and establish their new world order, which they are starting to set up. So just like Nebuchadnezzar, built a statue of himself, the beast will make an image to control the peoples through their worship. So when Nebuchadnezzar did that, he obviously sinned, and even more when he threw Daniel's friends into the fire. But then he realized that that was the only Elohim. But this chapter now, chapter 4, pretty much comes to show us what happened to Nebuchadnezzar for creating that image, for wanting to be worshipped, pretty much acting like Lucifer, and well, many other entities and many other humans. But in this case, it was one of the greatest kings ever in one of the greatest empires, represented by gold. So it was amazing in that time, and for the Gentile world, of course. So this story is very important, and he was a great king in the Gentile world, I repeat, and that is why this specific story is key. Although a lot of people have thought of themselves to be gods or whatever, and well, we have the story of Lucifer, of course, which is the one I mentioned as the representation. So that is why Yahweh gave Nebuchadnezzar the option to write this whole chapter, to explain to us what happened to him, why it happened, so that we may understand and also see in Nebuchadnezzar a representation of the fallen angel and many other fallen people who followed that angel, or at least the same attitude. So the chapter starts and says, Nebuchadnezzar the king, to all peoples, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth. So to the whole world. That's why it's so important. First of all, the whole thing I said. Second, because it represents the new world order, when all peoples, all languages, all nations are under one leader, like it is starting to happen with the coronavirus. They are setting everything up for a one world government like never before, and they are going so fast, and people are falling for it so easily that is scary if we didn't have Yahweh as the answer to save us and everything that we see in scriptures. If it wasn't for that, really there wouldn't be, well, the world would be pretty bad. And I mean, I cannot understand how people are doing if they don't have the Almighty, what they are thinking about the future, how they are thinking that this will be fixed or whatever. To me, it is really amazing to see people who are not even looking for the Almighty. But anyways, to all peoples, all nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, peace be multiplied to you. I thought it good to declare the signs and wonders that the Most High Elohim has worked for me. So this is huge, because it's not only part of scriptures, but the king of Babylon, that great empire, he decided to write a letter and send it to the whole world, to all peoples, for all of them to come to know who the true mighty one is. So we see how, for instance, Lucifer is a tool for Yahweh to reveal himself to the world by showing that only Yahweh is Elohim, that only Yahweh is mighty, that only he deserves worship. Not that he wants, like people tend to believe, because they tend to see Lucifer as if he were the Almighty. So they see, scriptures and the parts about worshiping the Almighty and all of that as kind of twisted, or they see that as a person who has a problem with ego and pride and all of that. And that is exactly what characterizes Lucifer, the false Elohim, the Elohim of this world. So by Nebuchadnezzar thinking that he was as they say, God, and then realizing that he was completely wrong and he was actually a beast by thinking that, like an animal, then he was used after all of that to tell the whole world that Yahweh had placed under his rule, to let them know that there is only one mighty one, one Elohim, one Almighty. So imagine if the most pagan leader in the world all of a sudden came to realize that there is only one, and he were to tell everybody, because all of a sudden he became humble. That is huge and very hard for it to happen, unless obviously Yahweh takes charge and does what he did in this story. Reason why Nebuchadnezzar had to tell everybody, and Yahweh took that letter and put it in the book of Daniel for us to have it forever. So it is also close to the story of Egypt, when Pharaoh didn't accept the Almighty until he saw the 10 plagues, and then his own army being destroyed in the Sea of Reeds, or the Red Sea as they call it. And he saw finally at that moment that Yahweh is the only Elohim, the only mighty one. So here we have Nebuchadnezzar, who said, I thought it good to declare the signs and wonders that the Most High Elohim has worked for me. How great are his signs, and how mighty his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and his dominion is from generation to generation. I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at rest in my house, and flourishing in my palace. I saw a dream which made me afraid, and the thoughts on my bed and the visions of my head troubled me. So he first had a dream. Yahweh showed him everything, and instead of rejoicing in the fact that the Almighty was showing him everything, he took it as a reason to be prideful and create an image to be worshipped through it. So then he has a different dream in which he gets all scared. So he says, I saw a dream which made me afraid, and the thoughts on my bed and the visions of my head troubled me. Therefore I issued a decree to bring in all the wise men of Babylon before me, that they might make known to me the interpretation of the dream. Then the magicians, the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers came in, and I told them the dream, but they did not make known to me its interpretation. So he calls everybody. He should know who to call already, but he still is calling everybody. So he calls everybody, and they are afraid to tell him. Some may not get the interpretation, of course, maybe most, but because of the dream, which had a bad interpretation, that could cause the life of the person who would tell the king a negative interpretation. So the only one who was true and faithful was Daniel. So he would be the only one, like in the second chapter, who received the interpretation. He himself received the dream and then the interpretation, and now he's the only one who is actually faithful to say it, no matter what the interpretation was. So then the magicians, the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers came in, and I told them the dream, but they did not make known to me its interpretation. The fact that he says they did not make known shows that some of them or all of them knew, but they did not want to let him know. So that shows that it was negative, and they were afraid to tell him something negative, because that could mean that they would have to die. So, because back in the day, kings, they had issues because they were humans, unless they had the Almighty, like in the case of David, which is pretty much the greatest example of a king. Other than him, they all had issues, and even David had issues, but he was forgiven. So he's the only and greatest example. So he was forgiven, so he's taken as a person who never sinned, because he actually repented with all his heart of his sins, and his heart was like the heart of Yahweh. So the will of David was like the will of Yahweh. So that is key. Most kings just fulfill their own will, and Yahweh has to many times use them to do things, but many times, because of all the power that they receive, because of all the worship pretty much that the people give them and all of that, they tend to become, well, like the leaven. They become arrogant and many other things. So they end up thinking that they are like the Almighty. I was saying that because let me see. Then the magicians just yeah. So because there are times, and we see it in Esdras and Nehemiah and other times in scriptures, when they would be sad and they would go to the king, and they would be kind of worried because the king could kill them for being sad before them. Back in the day, everybody who went to the king, they had to be with a happy face. They could not appear before the king all sad, because that would cause the king to become either sad or angry and end up taking their lives. So it is something amazing, and that is also kind of connects. It kind of connects with the fact that it says that nobody can see Yahweh and continue living. No human can see Yahweh and continue living because of the sin of men. So that was kind of taken back in the day, as nobody could enter with anything negative before the king, because that could mean their life. So there are many other things that can be said regarding that. The only point that I want to make is that it was very dangerous to appear before the king with a negative statement or face, because that could cause their death. So that's why the magicians, the astrologers, and all of them who knew the interpretation did not want to tell him. But Daniel had not, he didn't have that fear. So it says, verse 8, but at last Daniel came before me, because it's Nebuchadnezzar speaking. But at last Daniel came before me. And it says, his name is Belteshazzar, according to the name of my Elohim. That is amazing, because even though Nebuchadnezzar is writing that there is only one Elohim, who is the Almighty, that's how he called him. He called him the Most High Elohim. So by saying the Most High Elohim, he's kind of saying that there are other ones that are lower. Those are the angels whom the nations have taken as Elohim. So that's why, even though he's writing to let us know about the true and highest, the Most High Elohim, when he explains to us the name of Daniel, the letter tells us that he was given that name because of the God, or the Elohim, that Nebuchadnezzar worshipped. Bel is the one that he worshipped. Bel in English is Lord. So we see that, for instance, like many people nowadays, they have received a name connected to Christianity or to the Lord, because that's what they were taught. Just like Nebuchadnezzar gave a name to Daniel, Belteshazzar. The name Bel for Baal, which is Lord. So that is interesting, because he's saying that Yahweh is the Most High Elohim. But then there's another one, which is the one that he worshipped in Babel, who happens to be the Lord. So all of those people who are worshiping the Lord are worshiping a lower entity, are not worshiping the Most High Elohim. Because Nebuchadnezzar said, I will tell you what the Most High did for me. And then he starts speaking about a person to whom he gave the name Bel. And then he says that is the name of his, Nebuchadnezzar's, Elohim. And that is Lord. So the Lord is the God of Nebuchadnezzar, the God of Babylon, the God of this world. And the Most High Elohim is way above that. And that one that Nebuchadnezzar worshipped as Bel, Lord, is pretty much the one that made him think that he was the Most High. And that is why he ended up making a statue and then falling and becoming a beast. And it is interesting that nowadays people use the word beast in slang and stuff like that. Well, and I mean mostly young people, or kinda young people, like from, well, perhaps like the 90s till nowadays. The word beast has been used to mean something powerful, mighty, great. Like when they say of a person, perhaps in sports, he's a beast, they mean it in a nice way. However, spiritually, that is very evil. And that is the reason why the enemy decided to make that word mean that in the minds of most people in this generation. So, I was saying, but at last Daniel came before me. His name is Belteshazzar, according to the name of my Elohim. In him is the spirit of the set apart Elohim. So in Daniel, not in Bel. I want to make that clear. In him is the spirit of the most set apart Elohim. So, interestingly enough, Nebuchadnezzar is saying that he worships a different one than the one Daniel has. And the one that Daniel has as his Elohim is the reason why he's filled with his spirit. And that spirit is the one that lets him know everything. Therefore, the Elohim of Daniel, who is a servant at this moment, is greater than the Elohim of Nebuchadnezzar, who is the king at that moment. So that shows how this world is everything upside down. Because the king was working for the Lord. The servant of the king, Daniel, was working for the Most High Elohim, Yahweh. But in the other life that we are about to enter, everything will be clear. So Nebuchadnezzar would be a servant, because he humbled himself at the end of this chapter. He would be a servant, and Daniel would be the king. That's why Yahweh tells us in scriptures in Corinthians that we will judge angels like the Lord, and the angels that are worshipped as gods and lords in this world. So I was saying, but at last Daniel came before me. His name is Belteshazzar, according to the name of my Elohim. In him is the spirit of the Kadosh Elohim. And I told the dream before him, saying, Belteshazzar, chief of the magicians. This is interesting. Chief of the magicians. Daniel was the head of all of them. He was not a magician in the sense of making magic or witchcraft. Not at all. Although I don't doubt some of his students would practice those things. Magician makes reference to a wise person. They were wise. And he was the head of the wise men of Babylon. That's why the Magi who enter Israel to go and see Yahushua when he was 2 years old, the Magi were the wise men. So here when he says the chief of the magicians, he was the head of all the wise men who were called Magi, where we get the word magician. So Belteshazzar, chief of the magicians, because I know that the spirit of the Kadosh Elohim is in you, and no secret troubles you. This is important. And no secret troubles you. Basically, one is troubled when one doesn't know what to do or how to interpret something. So since Daniel had the spirit of the Most High, anything that he thought about would be, he would find a solution for it. So he wasn't troubled by anything, as he is being told right here by Nebuchadnezzar. I know that the spirit of the Kadosh Elohim is in you, and no secret troubles you. No secret troubles you. Because he knows that he can get the revelation of the secret if the Almighty's will decides for him to receive that. So that's why Nebuchadnezzar said that. Explain to me the visions of my dream that I have seen and its interpretation. These were the visions of my head while on my bed. I was looking, and behold, a tree in the midst of the earth. This is so important for many reasons. Well, one of those, I don't know how to put it. I guess that most of the people that are listening already know, because most of you guys also follow the studies in Spanish. But anyways, a lot of people will say that this was a dream, and dreams have no, like, they're senseless, kind, like that's what they think. Even though dreams can be a little bit crazy and things that are not normal may happen in dreams, the mind uses reality to make the dream. So that's why we think that it is reality while we are dreaming, in most cases. So while we are dreaming, it seems to be reality. And what doesn't make sense are things that, like, for instance, like we are in one place in a moment and then all of a sudden we are in a different place, or the watch doesn't have the hour and we don't think anything of it, or we may be talking to somebody and all of a sudden that somebody is somebody else. Stuff like that may happen because it is using imagination, but imagination is based on reality. So that's what I want to make clear. Although the reality may change during a dream, still is a reflection of reality as we experience it when we are awake. So, with that said, dreams are a reflection of reality. And here we see that Nebuchadnezzar, the king of all the earth, has a dream in which there is a tree in the middle of all the earth. In the middle of the earth. First of all, if the earth is a ball, what is the middle? It has no middle, or the middle will be the center of the ball, which they say is basically inaccessible and is a core of fire, heat, lava, and pretty much not accessible at all, not really seen, because they have tried to go to make a hole on the crust of the earth, and they haven't been able to go above 80 kilometers under. So they don't know really. They just put it in the textbooks as if it were a fact, yet they haven't seen it. They haven't proven that that is the case, because they haven't been able to go and actually test it like science says that things should be tested and seen and experimented with and all of that. So they haven't been able to go down for more than 80 kilometers. And other than that, my point is that if the earth is a ball, the center is right in the middle, and everybody will be living on the surface, as they say, right? However, here is saying there was a tree in the middle of the earth. I'm going to read it again. I was looking, and behold, a tree in the midst of the earth. So, other people may imagine it like the ball right here and the tree right here. Yet, that wouldn't be the middle. Like I said, it would be the core. But anyways, I'm just trying to show this so that you guys understand that the way they have told us that the earth is makes no sense when we put it next to the pages of scriptures. So that's why we must choose. And I have no problem with people choosing one or the other. I understand why they would choose the other. But we have to choose. We cannot say that scriptures are true and then say that scientists are telling us the truth, because one of the two is wrong then, and we must choose which one is wrong. And that is my point. We cannot just say that they are both right. We're just not understanding how to read scriptures. That is not the way of seeing things. Or say that scriptures must be taken as poetic and metaphor, and that's it, and that's why it doesn't make sense with what scientists are saying. We must choose one or the other, because they are saying different things regarding the place where we live. And when we look at reality and test it, we actually see that scriptures are right, but people don't want to do that. People just want to believe one or the other. And since scriptures are old, they rather believe scientists, because they don't want to be looked upon like they are crazy, or being laughed at because of what they believe. So we must choose one or the other. We cannot say that they go together, as most Christian pastors say. Most of them will believe in evolution, will believe in the Big Bang, will believe in, well, like I'm saying, the ball, the globe, and many other things that are not in scriptures. If we read scriptures carefully, we are told that the world is different. So the question is, do we believe the creator, or do we believe the supposed scientist? Who should we believe? Obviously the creator. But when people rather believe the scientist, is because they don't believe that there is a creator, or they don't believe that the creator actually gave the scriptures, or many other things. But it's a lack of faith, lack of well, yeah, pretty much faith, but it goes on to many other things. Also, scripture says that cursed is the man who trusts in a man. So by trusting in scientists only, we are trusting men. We should at least test things. Like, for instance, I have never seen water being able to stick to a ball under it, or above it, really, because it just goes down. Yet in a sphere, as a world, there is no up, there is no down. And well, that's a story for another day. But I want to say all of that because of what we are reading right here. A tree in the midst of the earth. So it cannot be in the core, because there are no trees there, as they say that the core is. Instead, the earth would have to be seen as a plane, in which there is a middle, like a table in which there is a middle, and that's where the tree would be. So in the midst of the earth, he saw a tree. So I was looking, and behold, a tree in the midst of the earth, and its height was great. The tree grew and became strong. Its height reached to the heavens. To the heavens. So just like we see in the story of Babel, they wanted to create a tower that would reach the heavens. And most people may read that and say they're crazy, they're stupid. How can they think they would do such a thing? Yet we see later on that Yahweh goes down to see what they are doing, and then decides to change their languages, because they would be able to accomplish it unless he did that. So Yahweh had to stop them, because they were going to be able to reach the heavens. If not, if it were impossible for men to reach the heavens through a tower, then why would he change the name, the languages? There would be no point in doing that. He would have just sat down and waited for them to fall and see their faces of astonishment when they would enter a space with no gravity and ended up floating and then exploding or whatever because of no air. So if Yahweh stopped them, is because they were going to be able to do it, as we see in the actual chapter. In Spanish, we're going to read it this Shabbat, actually. So interesting how this chapter connects with the Tower of Babel, and that's what we're reading this Shabbat. So the tree represents, and I'm going to start interpreting a little bit, even though Daniel will say later, the tree is pretty much Nebuchadnezzar, his kingdom, which was in the middle of the earth, in the sense of, well, they say that Israel is the middle, and it's very close to this part of land, which extended for a lot of well, yeah, a lot of places, a lot of nations that he came to conquer, and then he will rule them from the middle. But the point is that as the kingdom of Babylon was the main one ruling over all the earth, is as if it were right in the middle, the center, the most important part. So there was a tree in the center that grew all the way to the heavens. So that represents that his kingdom grew to the second heaven, in the sense that started, one could say, influencing the angels. And that is interesting because that is something that will happen with the last kingdom. So this chapter can be taken to understand what the last kingdom kind of will be. So just like in Babel, there was a tower that reached the heavens. Now the kingdom of Babylon grew so much in power and honor that it reached the heavens. So there are several ways of reaching the heavens, and that's why they are trying nowadays with rockets and other things. And that's why also they're trying with the LHC, the one in, well, CERN, where they are looking for the God particle, through which they would be able to travel, whether in time or in well, within dimensions, different dimensions. That's what they are trying to do or test. So the particle accelerator, that's what I was trying to say. So I was looking, and behold, a tree in the midst of the earth, and its height was great. The tree grew and became strong. Its height reached to the heavens. Reached to the heavens. So there's a heavens to reach. If the heavens were infinite, as they say, of space, which now they're saying that they're not infinite, and that they're actually they have walls and all of that. But anyways, they make up things all of the time according to what people start to find out. But the point is that they say that space is huge, huge, so huge. So how could a tree on a ball be able to reach the heavens? There's nothing to reach there, according to what they say. But if we accept what scriptures say, then yeah, you can reach the firmament, which is like if you were to plant a tree in a house, it would eventually reach the ceiling. Because every house, if it is going to work like it should have a ceiling, a roof. That roof of the creation, which is a house, is the firmament. So that's what it reached in the dream. The tree grew and became strong. Its height reached to the heavens, and it could be seen to the ends of all the earth. That is impossible, according to scientists. And I repeat, some would say, well, that is a dream, that's why it could happen. No, because this that happened here could happen in creation according to the rest of scriptures. When we read all of scriptures, we see that this is possible in the reality that Yahweh created for men to inhabit. Because it was possible with the Tower of Babel, and that was not a dream. So it could be seen to the ends of all the earth. So no matter where people were on the earth, even to the ends of it, they would be able to see the tower. I mean, the tree. They would be able to see the tree that was right in the midst. However, if the tree, no matter how big it were to be on the top of a ball, there is no way that people under the ball, on the south hemisphere, would be able to see the tree. No matter how tall it may be, people on the south hemisphere wouldn't be able to see that tree. So that, in the reality that scientists have been selling to the world for a while, since the philosophers, is obviously not possible according to that world. That's why Lucifer in Masonry is called the architect of the universe, because Lucifer, through through philosophy, or some philosophers, and then other people of Greece, and then Rome, and then nowadays, which is pretty much a mix of Greece and Rome because of the doctrines, I mean, and even belief systems. They ended up teaching everybody and putting in textbooks the world that Lucifer taught them to teach everybody. That's why he's called the architect of the universe, because he created the universe in which people are living according to their beliefs. So it is amazing how that works, because one person, I mean, two people can be in the same space, yet they may be living in a different world according to what they believe. And if we take that to spirituality or scriptures, it is interesting for atheists, for instance, the way they live, the way they think, that makes their reality that which they believe it is, a reality without a mighty one. Of course, the Almighty gives them bread and life and a family and love and all of that, because Yahweh is good, and Yahweh is the one who knows what will happen. So Yahweh knows that in the other life those people will be not part of what he prepared for the world. So since those people are not going to take part in that because of their own volition, then Yahweh gives them in this world something good to enjoy. So I'll continue. And it could be seen to the ends of all the earth. So the whole earth could see the tree. Yet if it were a ball, it's impossible. So its leaves were lovely, its fruit abundant, and in it was food for all. The beasts of the field found shade under it. The nations which are as beasts found shade under it, found protection under the kingdom of Babel when they accepted its ruleship. The beasts of the field found shade under it. The birds of the heavens dwelt in its branches. The birds of the heavens dwelt in its branches. So the angels of the second heaven would find habitation in this reality through that kingdom. This is important because the kingdom pretty much ends up deciding who the people in pagan kingdoms, who they will worship. So now they are preparing a kingdom in which they will worship whoever they want, as long as they accept one, which will be the beast and its image, which will be the false Messiah. So it's interesting what I just said, because it is as, for instance, with the homosexuals, they have the LGBTQ and a bunch of other letters that they will be adding according to their identities, which some say they put a number, some say that there are like 94 identities already. But anyways, they will keep growing in falsehood. So they say they accept, and they are so many identities and all of that, but they don't accept the true identity, which is heterosexual. That is the true identity. All of the other ones are false, yet they only accept those. But regarding the heterosexuals, they regard them as weird, crazy, evil, mean, hateful, and a bunch of other things. So the same thing with the true Elohim. They hate the true Elohim, but they accept all falsehood. Buddha, Jesus, and this and that and that and that. And so they claim that they accept all beliefs, they accept all systems, they accept everything except for the truth, because they hate that as being hateful, because it's the only one that tells them that they are wrong. So just like it happens in homosexuality, is happening in the religions. They are using the same idea, and that's why people are becoming pretty much spiritually homosexuals. That's why scripture talks a lot about Romans 1, if you want to read that relation that there is between idolatry and homosexuality, and the wine of the fornication of the whore of Babylon, for instance, which makes people end up doing spiritually things that are completely wrong, that are represented by the wrong things that people do sexually. So that's why the wine of the fornication represents an idolatry, because just like people end up having spiritual sex with different entities, some even with themselves, because they see themselves as gods, just like one man having sex with another man is in love with himself, with his own form, sex. So, everything that I'm saying is just to point to the fact that they are putting the whole world with the idea of diversity, with the idea of tolerance and acceptance, under falsehood, while hating the truth, claiming that all gods can be worshipped and they are all nice and good and they all lead to the one. That's what they say. But that one is represented by Nebuchadnezzar, by Lucifer, is Lucifer. The one that tells them, yeah, you can worship whoever you want as long as you end up worshiping him. I don't even want to say, well, I don't like to put myself in those words, so that's why I said, as people worship him. So through Buddha, they may be worshiping an angel, but that angel at the end serves Lucifer. So by worshiping Buddha, they are worshiping Lucifer. By worshiping Krishna, they're worshiping Lucifer. By worshiping a different angel, they're worshiping Lucifer. So it's the same thing. By being homosexual, by being a lesbian, bisexual, transsexual, pansexual, is all abomination according to scriptures. So, same thing. So the beast of the field found shade under it. The birds of the heavens dwelt in its branches. So the angels found a dwelling place through this kingdom, just like the fallen angels are finding dwelling places in the churches and synagogues and many other places where people worship, because they are not worshiping the true Elohim. They are worshiping an entity, whether a demon, fallen angel, or evil spirit. And all flesh was fed from it. All flesh was fed from it. I saw in the visions of my head while on my bed, and there was a watcher, a set apart one, coming down from heaven. He cried aloud and said thus. Here also could be said, he cried with strength, which is pretty close to what we see in Revelation about a Malach, Michael, who cries aloud also, and that is because he represents the voice of Yahweh. He is the voice of Yahweh, just like Yahushua is the word of Yahweh. Word and voice, first and last. So this seems to be Michael appearing to destroy Babel, just like it would happen at the end times, and we see in the book of Revelation. I saw in the visions of my head while on my head, and there was a watcher, a set apart one, coming down from heaven. He cried aloud and said thus, chop down the tree and cut off its branches. So he gave an order to cut Babylon, to destroy Babel, to destroy the confusion. Just like when Yahushua appeared on earth and John the Baptist, Yahuchanan, the immerser, he was doing his ministry. He said, the axe is already at the roots of the tree, and whatever tree does not give fruit will be cut off and thrown in the fire. So John the Baptist came preparing the way for Yahushua. Yahuchanan, he was expecting a little bit more, because he was expecting pretty much the first and last as one, fulfilling everything. Yet Yahushua appeared only as the first, and then there would be 2,000 years until the end. So that's why there was a little bit of confusion in the head of Yahuchanan, as we see in scriptures, and there are reasons for it, which we'll see eventually when we read those parts. So Yahuchanan was ready for Rome to be destroyed, and everybody who were not actually fulfilling the will of Yahweh to be thrown in the fire. And even though that which he said is true and will be fulfilled, and that is the reason why it had to be written, that wasn't going to happen at that specific time. My point is that, like I said in the book of Revelation, is similar to what we are reading here. Michael will come down like the voice of Yahweh to announce, like the shofar, the great trumpet, to announce that Satan is falling, to announce that Babylon, the great whore, the false doctrine, will be destroyed. So he said, chop down the tree and cut off its branches. That's where the angels were. The birds were on the branches, finding a home. We see, in the New Testament, Yahushua tells us of a parable in which there was a man, a rich man pretty much, who had a servant, and that servant started acting bad, like Lucifer is a representation of Lucifer, and he was fired. That servant was fired. So he went around to the other servants and started doing changes to whatever they owed the rich men. So through those changes, they ended up pretty much serving him and giving him a place, the bad servant. And I'm paraphrasing, I'm just saying the story in a nutshell so that I may explain what is here. So that bad servant went to other people who owed the man money, and he changed the books so that they would receive him in their places. And that's why scripture in Revelation 12 says that there is a time when Lucifer will be thrown out of heaven because there won't be any place for him any longer. And he will come down with a third of the angels, those whom he pretty much convinced to become rebellious against the Most High. So the fact that it says chop down the tree and cut off its branches is pretty much like saying destroy all the houses, all the doctrines, all the churches, all the persons that have become dwelling places for the angels. Pretty much those who worship those angels become their dwelling places. So by destroying those doctrines, those churches, those temples, and those nations that worship fallen angels, their branches will come down. Also is what we see in the book of Haggai, where it says that Yahweh, this time, unlike the time of Noah, in which he only shook the earth, this time, as Haggai says, and then Paul in the New Testament, it is written that this time Yahweh will shake the heavens and the earth. What Yahweh did in the time of Noah, that he destroyed the whole earth, now he will do in the earth and the heavens. That's why we are seeing here a prophecy of that moment in which the branches, the second heaven, will be cut off, so that those angels end up falling once and for all in Revelation 12. I hope that is understood. If not, please make your questions and I will see them as soon as we finish with the chapter. So I saw in the visions of my head while on my bed, and there was a watcher, a set apart one, coming down from heaven. He cried out loud and said thus, chop down the tree and cut off its branches, strip off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Let the beasts get out from under it. So let the nations get out from under its rule. Let the nations become free for a moment, because then they would be under the Persians. However, that part is not shown here because I repeat, when it comes to the historical sense of this letter, the Persians came and took over. Pretty much those were the people that Yahweh used to cut off the tree. But Persia represents the chosen few. That's why Persia means splendid. The chosen few are the splendid ones that Yahweh chose for the end times to be transformed. So we can take this as Yahweh sending the last as the axe, because the last comes as the iron horn mentioned in Micah, the prophet Micah. And also in Isaiah 63 we see that Yahweh comes as a Roman dressed as Edom. And also we see Yaakov dressed as his brother Esau to go and get the blessing. So we see Yaakov dressing as Esau, who became Edom, And Yahweh said that he would be dressed as an Edomite in the end times. That's why Yahushua said that he would come as a thief in the night. And many other things that we see in scriptures. The point here is that the last is coming as a Roman. And according to the statue seen by Daniel in chapter 2, Rome was represented by iron. So iron is Rome. And iron was the metal, or is the metal used to make axes. So the axe that cuts the tree is the last who comes as a Roman. Is the last who comes as the iron horn. And the axe needs a handle made with wood. So the axe has iron and wood. That is the last and the first. Yahushua came as the first to die on a tree, on a cross made of wood. So that wood, that sacrifice, is what would help or give the strength to the iron to be able to cut Babylon from the earth, its kingship. So when the first came, he pretty much left the handle of the axe through his sacrifice. When the last comes, he is the head of the axe because he comes as a Roman. So when the iron and the wood mix, we have the axe. So the last, through the strength given by Yahushua, because we can do all things through Yahushua who strengthens us. So when the last becomes one with Yahushua by accepting him as sovereign, so when Yahushua gives him the spirit, that's when he becomes the axe. So he can cut the tree of Babylon. Because instead of the tree of Yahweh growing from the earth, like what we see in Isaiah 11, that the tree was growing and they cut it, so then at the end a branch will come out of the stem of Yishai. That branch is the last. Because when Yahushua came, he came as the seed. The seed started growing and becoming a tree, but the apostasy came through Rome, which is iron like an axe, and cut the tree that Yahweh was forming. So then when Rome cut the real tree, a different tree started growing, that of the apostasy, that of the church. So it started growing and growing and growing, and that is the great whore of Babylon that we see nowadays, the false doctrine in which so many false angels are being worshipped as idols, who are called saints, and they are in all of those branches, and people are going under those branches to worship those angels and demons and false entities, evil spirits, through those idols. So that's why the last has to come and use the axe, the iron, get a hold of Yahushua, his sacrifice, represented by the wood, and cut the tree, which is the great whore of Babylon, which will fall, and then the angels will fall with it. I hope all of that is clear. It's very important what is being represented here, and how the last is like the angel Michael, who when he spoke, the axe manifested and cut the tree. So the Malach is the axe. Once the Malach becomes a man and accepts Yahushua, then the handle is on the head and it can be used for cutting the tree. So chop down the tree and cut off its branches, strip off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Let the beasts get out from under it, and the birds from its branches. Nevertheless, leave the stump and roots in the earth. Leave the stump and roots in the earth, bound with a band of iron and bronze. See how interesting, which I just mentioned. I mentioned a while back how the mix of Roman doctrine and the Greek doctrine became the apostasy of nowadays. Rome is represented by iron, Greece by bronze. So it says here, bound with a band of iron and bronze. That's what makes the great whore of Babylon. The doctrine of nowadays is a mix of iron and bronze. Here is also has to do with the fact that the empire of Greece and then Rome would appear. And also the stump and its roots would be left on the earth like Daniel says, that some nations will be left during the millennium, and then they will gather and come against Israel during the end of the millennium, when when Lucifer will fool them again, so they will come as Gog and Magog, and other reasons, but I'm sure we'll see in a little bit one of those. So, bound with a band of iron and bronze, in the tender grass of the field, let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let him graze with the beasts. Here, look how it said, leave the stump and roots in the earth. And then it starts talking about it as if it were a person. So it is talking about Nebuchadnezzar. Like I said, the tree was Nebuchadnezzar and his kingdom, because the king represents his own kingdom. That's why the beast of the book of Revelation is both the kingdom and the person, the new world order and the world leader. In Daniel, we see it separate. In the book of Daniel, we see the beast and the little horn. So the beast is the government that will rule over the world, and the little horn that the beast has is the leader. Just like I said about the last, who is called an iron horn. He is a horn, the horn of Jerusalem, but he's made of iron. That's why he's the world leader that Yahweh will place on this world at the end of everything. Because he is the horn, and, well, many other reasons that I have said before. So, let him graze with the beasts and the grass of the earth. Let his heart be changed from that of a man. Let him be given the heart of a beast, and let 7 times pass over him. Let 7 times pass over him. It could be interpreted also as 7 years. 7 years like the last week of Daniel. 7 years which represent the last 7 years in which the end times will happen. A lot of people think that the end, the apocalypse, will happen in a day. They think that everything will blow up and that's it. And even though that is true individually, for every person, the end of their life is pretty much the end of the world. However it happens, when that person dies, is becoming the end of his or her world, because every head is a world. So in a way it's true. The end of the world for each person is one day, but for the world it will be 7 years. It will happen in a matter of 7 years. During the seals, 1/4 of the population of the world will die. So to them will only happen in a matter of 3 years. I mean, the seals. During the trumpets, which will happen in pretty much a year, or even less, actually less than a year, the trumpets, in that time, 1/3 of the population will die. So from the population that there is right now, 1/4 will die during the seals. Then from whatever is left, 1/3 will die. And then from what is left, all will be punished. Only a few that are pretty much not counted, because there will be so few that the earth will seem empty by the end of the last 7 plagues. So I said all that because of what it says here. Just a second. Let his heart be changed from that of a man. So he's talking about Nebuchadnezzar, who was the tree, who would be cut down, humiliated, for him to become humble. So Yahweh allowed for his heart to become that of a beast, which is kind of like what happened to Pharaoh, in the sense of conscience. Like, his heart became hard as a stone, so he didn't believe anything that Moshe said or did. That's why he went through 10 plagues. Now, instead of his heart turning to stone, or Yahweh hardening the heart of the Pharaoh, in this case, he switched the mind of Nebuchadnezzar the king into that of a beast. Basically, he took away certain capacities that we have as humans, so that he would begin acting like a beast, an animal, which is huge. It's important because the world leader of the end times is called a beast. So that means that Nebuchadnezzar, by doing what he did in the previous chapter of making a statue, an image of himself, he ended up becoming a beast because he lost all judgment, free will, like the one that humans have, which is greater than anything else, because there is an illusion or a reflection of that free will that the angels have. That's why they rebelled against the Most High. So, let his heart be changed from that of a man, let him be given the heart of a beast. So he represents the beast, the world leader, who will become the beast of Revelation. And even though, I want to make clear, even though what we're about to read shows how beastly he became, that is not how the beast will be. This is showing that Nebuchadnezzar fell very low because of his pride, and that is to show, as an example, prophetical reflection, how the world leader of the end times, called the beast, will manifest, and how he will be humiliated, but afterwards. So people will see him as a human. They will see him as, they would think he's one of the smartest or the smartest human ever. They would think that he's charismatic. They would think that he is powerful, wise, and other things. But the fact that that person won't believe in the Most High, Yahweh, or won't he won't submit to Yahweh, is because in his heart he will be a beast. He will be an animal, because that's what makes us different from the animals. Among other things, is the fact that we can have a relationship with the Most High. We can have intimacy with the Most High through prayer, through understanding, through logic, through intelligence, through fulfilling commandments, and other things. So a person who disregards all of that is pretty much acting like a beast. And that is the reason why they are disregarding all of that, because they want to do things that animals do. And when we follow the Almighty, He doesn't allow us to act like animals. So, I just wanted to make that clear. This represents the world leader, although people will see the world leader as the greatest human ever. Which is interesting, because in the world they believe in evolution. So they are now thinking that several things are part of evolution. There are people who think that homosexuality is part of evolution, which makes no sense because it goes against what supposedly evolution is. So that shows how backwards everything in the world is. Everything is upside down and backwards, like I say in one of my songs. So everything is all wrong. They call good evil and evil good. They call truth a lie, and they call lies absolute truths, after they say that the absolute truth does not exist, yet to them whatever they believe is absolutely true. So that shows also a lot of pride and ego. So let his heart be changed from that of a man, let him be given the heart of a beast, and let 7 times pass over him. So that shows that the end times will happen in 7 years, in which the beast will gain power, because the beast will begin pretty much during the first year of the last 7, during the second seal, but he will receive authority close to the 5th seal, and that will extend all the way to the 5th bowl of wrath, in which he will lose his power. Verse 17 says, this decision is by the decree of the watchers. This decision is by the decree of the watchers. Also interesting, because the watchers are a set of angels. Like, let's say the Almighty made the second heaven, like if it were a company. So there are different departments. Every angel, like every department, has to deal with a different aspect of our reality. Angels have the job of turning the power of the Spirit that comes down to them from the third heaven and turning it into material reality. So the angels are right in the middle. There are different departments. There is one department in which they're called the Watchers, like human resources. So they are watching all the time at humanity to see how they are behaving and to see if there is anything that they must do or tell the Almighty that He should do, stuff like that. And they are from this department. It is from this department that 200 watchers fell down in the time of Enoch, the time of Noah. 200 of those watchers came down because since they were watching humanity all the time, they fell in love, and they still do, some of them, as Paul tells us in the New Covenant. But they fell in love with the idea of having children and therefore having their own humans, having their own men and women within this reality. So they came down and they got with, there are many ways, or mainly couple ways in which they explain it, but pretty much they had sex with the daughters of Adam, and the daughters of Adam gave them children, and those children became giants, and they became the heroes of the past, and those who in the mythology appear as being part human, part God. So the Watchers, 200 of them, came down and got with the women, and that's how they got children in this reality. So that same department is the one that is being mentioned here. The decision is by the decree of the Watchers. So the department of angels that are called Watchers saw that Babylon had to fall because the pride of the king was too much. So it says, the decision is by the decree of the Watchers, and the sentence by the word of the set apart ones, in order that the living may know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men. That's why the decree, the Watchers and the set apart ones. In order that the living may know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men, which is what is about to happen in this world. We are approaching the end of times, in which finally, as prophesied, Yahweh will reveal Himself as the only mighty one. He will reveal Himself as the only power that gives everything to everybody, whether they be angels, humans, even demons, and whatever exists, they receive that existence from the Most High. So that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men, gives it to whomever He will, and sets over it the lowest of men. So Yahweh does whatever He wants, and He can put over those kingdoms even the lowest of men. Which is interesting, like I was saying, that the king was Nebuchadnezzar, who worshipped the Lord. Yet there was Daniel, who was his servant, and he worshipped the Most High, Elohim. So that's why he's saying this here. He sets over the kingdom of all the earth, the pagan world, the lowest of all. In the spiritual sense, in the positive regarding the last, the lowest of all in the sense of the humblest. Like Moshe was the most humble man of all. Obviously, then came Yahushua and showed humility incarnate, pretty much. So the most humble of all is the one that Yahweh will raise up to become the king of all. That's why Yahushua also said, whoever wants to become the first, he has to first become the last. Whoever wants to be whoever wants to govern, he will have to serve. And also the fact that Yahweh chooses from the world that which to the world is worthless, So to the world, the chosen few will be nothing as nothing. They will be most of them Gentiles to the world, I repeat. And if it were for society, they would get rid of all of them. However, Yahweh sees them as precious and Yahweh will save them from experiencing death itself. So that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men, gives it to whomever he will, and sets over it the lowest of men. This dream I, King Nebuchadnezzar, have seen. Now you, Belteshazzar, declare its interpretations, since all the wise men of my kingdom are not able to make known to me the interpretation. But you are able, for the Spirit of the Most High Elohim is in you. Verse 19. Then Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, was astonished for a time, and his thoughts troubled him. So he realized what was happening and what he had to tell the king. So his thoughts troubled him. So the king spoke and said, Belteshazzar, do not let the dream or its interpretation trouble you. Belteshazzar answered and said, My sovereign, may the dream concern those who hate you, and its interpretation concern your enemies. See how smart Daniel was and is, of course, since he is alive with the Father. So Belteshazzar answered and said, My sovereign, may the dream concern those who hate you. So since Daniel realizes that the dream was something negative and very negative, he starts the interpretation, he starts the whole thing with telling the king, may the dream be for your enemies. May the dream be for your enemies, those who hate you, so that the king may prepare himself for what he's about to hear. And also Daniel is doing this because he knows the power of words and also of interpretation, and revealing the interpretation of something gives it power for it to manifest. So that's why he starts that with this sentence. May the dream concern those who hate you, and its interpretation concern your enemies. The tree that you saw, which grew and became strong, whose height reached to the heavens, and which could be seen by all the earth, whose leaves were lovely, and its fruit abundant, and which was food for all, under which the beasts of the field dwelt, and in whose branches the birds of the heaven had their home. It is you, O king, who have grown and become strong. Who have grown and become strong. I have said many times, and this is one of those reasons, one of the reasons why I have said that. In scriptures we see that humans are represented by trees. Normally, for instance, a forest represents an army or a group of people. And that's why a tree that does not give fruit will be cut off, because a person who does not act according to the will of Yahweh and therefore gives no fruit will be cut off from this reality. So trees represent humans according to scriptures. That's why when we see in Revelation 7 that the angel tells the 4 angels on the corners of the earth not to touch the trees, only the sea and the earth. The sea represents the nations, the earth represents the many who believe but haven't given fruit, so they are only land. And then the trees, which are those who give fruit and therefore represent the chosen few, who have the name of the Father and the Son on their foreheads. That is the seal of the Mighty One, and that is why they cannot be touched by those entities, because the angel tells them not to touch them until he seals them on their foreheads. And those are the 144,000. So then it said, O king, it is you, O king, who have grown and become strong, for your greatness has grown and reaches to the heavens, and your dominion to the end of the earth. And inasmuch as the king saw a watcher, a set-apart one, coming down from heaven and saying, chop down the tree and destroy it. Interesting that it says watcher, set-apart one. So the watchers are the set-apart ones. like a department set apart from the other departments. And in this case, by the fact that it's saying watchers who were set apart, is pretty much like the supervisors of that department, in the sense that are like I said, that whether it was Michael or at least represented Michael because of everything that I have said, but it's like we see in Zechariah and in Revelation that Yahweh has 7 angels which are set apart from all other angels and work directly for him and are his eyes. He has 7 angels or 7 eyes who are the ones who see the whole earth. That's why they are the watchers. So the eyes are the 7 set apart angels that work directly for Yahweh, who are the watchers in the sense of those who watch the earth. So then it says, and inasmuch as the king saw a watcher, a set apart one, coming down from heaven and saying, chop down the tree and destroy it, but leave its stump and roots in the earth. That's pretty much like saying, take all the honor and power from Nebuchadnezzar, but don't kill him. So chop down the tree and destroy it, but leave its stump and roots in the earth, bound with a band of iron and bronze in the tender grass of the field. Let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let him graze with the beasts of the field, till 7 times pass over him. This is the interpretation, O king, and this is the decree of the Most High. Which is interesting, because we just saw that it says a set apart one coming down from heaven saying, do this, do that. And this is according to the decree of the set apart ones, the watchers. And now it's saying decree of the Most High. So we see that the Most High reveals himself and his decree through his voice, which cried aloud, who is Michael, a set apart malach, watcher. So chop down the tree and destroy it, but leave its stump and roots in it. Let me see. Verse 24. This is the interpretation, O king, and this is the decree of the Most High, which has come upon my sovereign, the king. So even though he knew that it was from the Most High that this was sent, this message, and it was a decree, and it could not be changed, even though all of that, he started, because he was wise, with the words, may the interpretation be for your enemies and for those who hate you. But now he's saying that there's no way around the fact that it's Yahweh who decided it, so there's no coming out of it. So it says, O king, and this is the decree of the Most High which has come upon my sovereign the king. They shall drive you from men. Your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field, and they shall make you eat grass like oxen. Interesting, because the ox is pretty much another name for the same animal that they worship when they came out of Egypt, the golden calf. So how interesting that in the statue that Daniel interpreted for the king in Daniel 2, the head of gold was the king Nebuchadnezzar, but now he became like an ox, like a calf, but he was the gold, so now he is the golden calf, which shows that when a person falls in the sin of thinking to be a mighty one or worshiping the Lord, which was the mighty one of Nebuchadnezzar, they are actually worshiping the golden calf, a false Elohim, and that's why they become like the calf. Therefore, they become like animals, like beasts, like it happened with Nebuchadnezzar. That's why we must believe in the image of the Father, which is the Son, Yahushua, so that we may be humans, men. Because it is also written that in Yahushua there is no man nor women. It's only one. So, it is like going back to the time before Adam and Eve were separated into 2. So, this is the interpretation, O king, and this is the decree of the Most High, which has come upon my sovereign the king. They shall drive you from men. Your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field, and they shall make you eat grass like oxen. They shall wet you with the dew of heaven, And he's saying they, like the angels would make this happen. And also, perhaps even men would take him as an animal for some time. But they shall wet you with the dew of heaven, and 7 times shall pass over you, till you know, this is so important, till you know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men and gives it to whomever he chooses. So even though he realized that the only mighty one was that of Daniel, he kept worshiping the Lord. He made an image to be worshipped through that statue. And therefore Yahweh took away his human mind for him to become like an animal, which was what he deserved for worshiping an animal who claimed to be the Most High. And this gives also a little bit of strength to an interpretation that I have mentioned previously regarding certain types of men who act like animals, who may not be as evil as some or all who will go to the lake of fire, but do not want to act like humans. So they may become animals when reality sets, because this reality is an illusion. That's why one day you can be in one job, the next day you can be in a different job. That's why things change. That's what I mean. In this world, things change. In the other reality, nothing will change ever. So in this reality, one thing may appear something and be other, because this is the reality of illusions, where people can lie. In the other reality, nobody will be able to lie, so everything will be completely real. So in this world, there are people who act like animals but look like humans. And we are seeing what Yahweh would do with those people, like he did with Nebuchadnezzar, for not realizing, for not accepting that Yahweh is the only, and he's the one who gave Nebuchadnezzar the power. But Nebuchadnezzar was giving the credit to other one, and perhaps even to himself, for being so powerful in that kingdom. So that's why Yahweh has to take it from him, so that after 7 years he will finally give credit to the only one who deserves that credit. So they shall wet you with the dew of heaven, and 7 times shall pass over you, till you know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men and gives it to whomever he chooses. This is so important. Not whomever the people choose through democracy. Not whomever is born of whoever was the king previously. No, Yahweh is the one who chooses the kings. That's it. Even those who have been evil, because the people, for whatever reason and sins they committed, deserve that type of rulership. So may Yahweh have mercy on us for what this world deserves, and which is the reason why they are receiving the beast as the world leader. So may Yahweh protect those who accept only Yahweh's kingship, and obviously respect whoever Yahweh chooses in the sense of his kingdom, in which we will be when the transformation happens. Verse 26. And inasmuch as they gave the command to leave the stump and roots of the tree, your kingdom shall be assured to you. So Daniel, and Yahweh is so good, Daniel is telling the king, even though you will be taken out for a while, 7 years, and you will be acting like an animal, still, when you come back to your senses, your throne will be there for you, because the roots won't be taken out. Inasmuch as they gave the command to leave the stump and roots of the tree, your kingdom shall be assured to you after you come to know that heaven rules. Until you come to know that heaven rules. That Yahweh rules, of course. So, it is not that Yahweh would punish Nebuchadnezzar with 7 years of being an animal. Pretty much his own actions turned him into an animal, and he wouldn't be able to recognize the Most High until 7 years passed. That's why Yahweh told him through a dream what would happen with him because of his own actions, and how he would take 7 years until he realized it. So, and inasmuch as they gave the command to leave the stump and the roots of the tree, your kingdom shall be assured to you after you come to know that heaven rules. After you come to know that heaven rules. Once you know heaven rules, heaven is the best, that heaven rules, then when you accept it, you will continue ruling. Therefore, O king, let my advice be acceptable to you. Break off your sins by being righteous. That's so important. If you become righteous, your sins pretty much are rectified or broken off from you. And therefore, the consequence for those sins will not come against you or on you, because you have broken off those sins from you through your righteousness. There are times in which there is not enough time to do enough righteousness. And that's what happened with Nebuchadnezzar. But still, the advice was wise, and we should always act righteous so that whatever we do wrong, Yahweh may forgive. And also, we must forgive others so that Yahweh may forgive us. So there are two ways in which you can be saved from the consequences of your actions: by forgiving others and by acting right. Yahweh will act merciful with you. And of course, if you have Yahushua, that's key. But having Yahushua does not give us permission to act wrong, which a lot of people believe, unfortunately, sadly. So, believing in Yahushua takes our sins away. But then we must act righteous and forgive others, so that if we end up falling or committing whatever bad action, consciously or unconscious, that Yahweh may forgive us. And obviously we shouldn't do conscious sins. So I mean, like, for instance, when somebody gets angry and all of a sudden may say something that regrets later on, or stuff like that. I'm not talking about mortal sins that we see in scriptures that Paul talks about regarding those who come to Yahushua. There is no way that that person should or would commit one of those sins. So, and inasmuch as they gave the command to leave the stump and roots of the tree, I already said that. Therefore, O king, let my advice be acceptable to you. Break off your sins and by being righteous, and your iniquities by showing mercy to the poor. What I was just saying, two ways in which one can receive protection, salvation. And in this case, the second one was mentioned as by showing mercy to the poor. I said by showing mercy to those who wrong you, by forgiving others. In this case, is by helping the poor. But my point is that the second is to show mercy. Show mercy. So you show mercy to those over whom you have authority, and they may have done something, so you can have mercy on them whenever they ask for forgiveness. And also, of course, you can show mercy when you have certain things that others don't and that others may need. So you can show mercy by giving them what they don't have. Perhaps they haven't worked for it. Perhaps they, whatever reason that may be. That's why it is an act of mercy to help others who may not have what you do, what you have, and that may need it. And also, it is interesting in Hebrew, tzedakah is righteousness. Tzedakah, righteousness. And tzedakah is the same word that is used when given to the poor. When giving charity, it's called tzedakah. Because when you help the poor, Yahweh helps you. When you show mercy to the poor, Yahweh shows mercy to you. So when you give to the poor, tzedakah, you are being justified or becoming righteous through that tzedakah that you are giving. Yahweh gives you tzedakah. So you become righteous by giving mercy to the poor. So we see those two here. To act righteous and show mercy. Act righteously, show mercy. Forgiving others, helping the poor, and other ways in which mercy can be shown. So, break off your sins by being righteous, and your iniquities by showing mercy to the poor. Perhaps there may be a lengthening of your prosperity. So Daniel tells him that perhaps Yahweh will take longer to make it happen. So by saying this, he's saying two things. One, he's giving the advice because perhaps he can be saved still, but only Yahweh knows. But after saying it, he's also mentioning that the decree was set. It was going to happen. So what he could actually do was to make Yahweh wait a little longer for it to happen, so he could lengthen the time for the decree. But one can either stop it, or in this case lengthen it, since Daniel already knew that it was going to happen. There was a decree for it. So perhaps there may be a lengthening of your prosperity. All this came upon King Nebuchadnezzar. So pretty much he didn't follow the advice, or maybe he tried but he didn't have enough time. At the end it came. So all this came upon King Nebuchadnezzar. At the end of the 12 months, he was walking about the royal palace of Babylon. So pretty much after a year it happened, which is interesting because after a year you may forget your dreams and many things, and he may have taken it after a couple months like, oh, nothing's gonna happen, whatever. Perhaps he started doing righteousness, and that's why it took a year to happen. But because of what we're about to read, it kind of seems like he was doing what he always did, like nothing was going to happen, kind of even forgot about it, and all of a sudden happened. That's one of the reasons why it is very important that we congregate. And I use the word congregate even though right now we're not physically congregating, but virtually we are, spiritually we are. So my point is that it is very important to continue studying scriptures so that we may not forget the promises, what we must do, the will of Yahweh, and also to help others, our brethren. So that's why I meant congregating, because we also must keep in contact one way or another with those who believe as we do. So all this came upon King Nebuchadnezzar. At the end of the 12 months, he was walking about the royal palace of Babylon. The king spoke, saying, and this is where everything went down. Like I said, it seems like he forgot. And not only did he forget, he continued acting the same way and even worse, because he opened his mouth to say something that he never should have said. Because like I said, words are very important. That's why Daniel was so wise that when he was about to give that negative interpretation to the king, he made an introduction to pretty much appease the king so that the king wouldn't kill him. And then he gave an advice, hoping that the king would listen and not do things like this. So the king spoke, "Is not this great Babylon that I have built for royal, that I have built for a royal dwelling by my mighty power and for the honor of my majesty?" He used 3 times a word referring to himself. I, my, and then my. So 3 times, like the 3 strikes. 3 times like Samael, Lucifer, and Azazel, pretty much showing that he's a representation of the reason why those 3 angels fell from the honor that Yahweh have given them. And also like the fact that Yahweh, the one whom he was rejecting and disrespecting, he is the one who was, who is, and who will be. So since Yahweh is the one who was, who is, and who will be, and Nebuchadnezzar was disrespecting him by worshiping pretty much Samael, Lucifer, and Azazel, Then he said, I, my, and my. So is not this great Babylon? And it's interesting when we read that through the meaning of the name Babylon. Is not this great confusion that I have built for a royal dwelling that man built for the fallen angels, doctrines of demons, and more? That I have built for a royal dwelling by my mighty power and for the honor of my majesty? Not for the honor of the majesty of Yahweh, which would be what the King David would say, even if he was the one who built it. And even if the king was the one who built it, it was their subjects. It may have been his will, his power, and his riches that made it possible. So there are many things that could be said there, but my point is that the king in Israel, the true king, would recognize the majesty of Yahweh, and that would be the reason why Yahweh would place his own majesty on the king, as written in Isaiah 42. Yahweh places his own majesty on his king, the one that he chooses, as long as the king continues to send that majesty up to whom it belongs. So that's why Yahweh separated the first and second coming in two, so that they are both connected and they both give honor to the Most High, Yahweh. So the king must recognize that Yahweh is the creator who gives him all the majesty and the power for all the people to be his subjects, pretty much. But when that king cuts that connection with the Most High by saying that he is the Most High and that he is the one who built everything and that he is the one with the power to continue having those people as subjects and all of that, that is the moment where everything comes down. So he said, is not this great Babylon that I have built for a royal dwelling by my mighty power and for the honor of my majesty? And listen, while the word was still in the king's mouth, so he was still talking, and everything came down. While the word was still in the king's mouth, a voice fell from heaven. Interesting how it says fell from heaven. Not came, fell. And a voice. Because like I said, the voice of Yahweh is Michael, whom will manifest at the end. However, before Yahushua came, Yahweh would manifest through different angels, not just Michael, through different angels. And when those angels spoke, they were acting as the voice of Yahweh. So the fact that when Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, who represents the beast, the world leader, says this, the fact that the scripture says that a voice fell is showing that when Nebuchadnezzar said that, his angel fell. Like the fact that the beast will act and speak like him, like we see in the book of Daniel, and we'll see it in the next chapters. When the world leader, the little horn, speaks like that, his kingdom will come down in a matter of 3.5 years, which is nothing. His kingdom will last pretty much, 42 months, as written in scriptures. So while his word was in his mouth, he was talking how great he was according to his own mind. At that moment, a voice fell from heaven. Like the fact that the beast will be talking during his kingship on this earth, and while he is in power, Lucifer will fall from heaven in Revelation 12. And at that time, he will still have 2.5 years more to go. But it is interesting that while the world leader is on earth, Lucifer will fall. And we are reading here that while he was speaking, a voice fell. So while the world leader is ruling, Lucifer will fall. So while the word was still in the king's mouth, a voice fell from heaven. King Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is spoken, the kingdom has departed from you, and they shall drive you from men, and your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field. They shall make you eat grass like oxen, and 7 times shall pass over you, until you know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men and gives it to whomever he chooses. So the voice said what Daniel had told him a year before. So right there, he remembered, of course. And it shows also Daniel working as the voice of Yahweh, because now that this voice tells him this, which was coming from heaven, representing the falling of the voice represents the falling of the angel in Revelation 12. But the fact of what is being said to him is what Daniel told him, showing how Daniel represents the voice of Yahweh. And also showing pretty much how Daniel would take the place of that angel who fell, like represented by, well, we read it all over scriptures. We actually read it yesterday in the study of Isaiah 22, in case you want to read it, where it shows how Lucifer will be taken out and Yahweh will place in his authority with his clothing and everything, the second coming. So we see that the words that are said to him are the same that Daniel had told him a year before. That very hour, the word was fulfilled concerning Nebuchadnezzar. He was driven from men and ate grass like oxen. His body was wet with the dew of heaven, till his hair had grown like eagle's feathers. So he was a weird mix, because his hair grew, but it became like feathers of an eagle, which is interesting because when we read later on in Daniel also, I will read that part, I guess, in Daniel, let me see. In Daniel 7, we see that it says regarding four beasts that Daniel sees, which are pretty much the four metals after the gold in the statue. So when we read it, I'll explain it better, but chapter 2 and chapter 7 are connected. Chapter 2, we see the statue, gold, silver, bronze, iron, and then iron mixed with clay. Now we see four beasts, and in this case the first beast would be the gold, actually, because it would be Babylon. The second beast is the Persians, which would be the silver. The third beast are the Romans, I'm jumping, the Greeks, which would be the bronze. And then the fourth beast would be Rome, which would be the legs of iron of the statue. So the statue of Daniel 2 is pretty much the same vision with different entities that is given to Daniel in Daniel 7. So we read that it says, the first was like a lion, Daniel 7:4. The first was like a lion, that is Babylon, and had eagle's wings. So we see that the beast, or Nebuchadnezzar, became a beast whose hair grew until it became like the feathers of an eagle. So we see that the kingdom of Babylon represents, or is represented by, a lion with eagle wings, which is pretty much close to the image of the cherub, or the cherubim, or the cherubim. They give different names, but in Hebrew is cherub, and cherubim is the plural. So the cherub is a type of angel that has four different shapes, or is a mix of four animals: the ox, the lion, the eagle, and the man. The cherub was used as an image in Babylon. It was found in a lot of places. Many of the things that they found in Babylon had the image of a cherub. So that's why one could say that the image of the cherub represented Babylon, which is funny or interesting, because in Ezekiel 28 we see that Yahweh talks to the king of Tyre, Tur, who represented Lucifer, and Yahweh calls him cherub, who covered like a veil. That's why people got lost, and many other things that can be said there, but I just want to mention the fact that Yahweh speaks of Lucifer as a cherub. And we see that Babylon was represented by something similar to a cherub, which is kind of showing and confirming that the Baal or Lord that Nebuchadnezzar worshipped was Lucifer. And that's why everything that I had said regarding this chapter that we have been reading. Not only that, it is written that, we just saw that he became like an ox, but then he got feathers like an eagle. Now we see here that he was like a lion. So we already have 3 of the animals of the cherub. And I will read the rest of this verse, and then we'll go to chapter 3 to finish it. And I'll finish with the interpretation and the several connections that are made with this. So the first was like a lion, and had eagle's wings. I watched till its wings were plucked off. That is interesting because it could be understood as the power that it had to go over all the nations was taken away. So when Babylon fell. But in the spiritual sense regarding the soul of Nebuchadnezzar represents the time when those 7 years ended, when he stopped being like a beast and whatever feathers he had were taken away. So that's why he says after, I watched till his wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on 2 feet like a man. And a man's heart was given to him, was given to it. So we are seeing in the revelation and interpretation that Daniel gave him that he would become a beast. But after 7 years, he would recognize Yahweh and he would become a man again. And his heart would be of a man because he had turned into a beast. Yahweh said that his heart would turn into the heart of a beast. And now we are seeing in Revelation 7 that that beast got on its 2 feet and became a man and received a heart of a man. So that shows that Nebuchadnezzar at the end of his life repented, accepted Yahweh as the Almighty, and became a human being spiritually. But also shows that he represents the cherub as the king of Babel, the king of confusion, and that is Lucifer, Halel. That's why it's represented by a cherub. Here we see man, eagle, lion. And in Daniel 4, we are seeing that he was also like an ox. So the 4 animals that cover the throne. The lion represents Yahushua, Messiah, as the lion of Yehudah, as the king. The ox represents Mashiach as a servant, and is connected with Ephraim. The eagle is connected with Dan, and it shows Mashiach as a messenger, the Malach who came, sent by Yahweh. And the man shows that Mashiach would come as a man, for men, being the image of men. So that's why those 4 creatures cover the throne. That's why those 4 images. And it's also interesting that, I just said Mashiach, because those 4 are connected with both the first and last. When it comes to the last, he comes as the Son of Man. So there's the face of man. He comes as the Malach Mikael who took flesh, like the eagle, whose wings are taken off so that he can be a man and become the prodigal son and do everything that I have explained in other times. He comes from the tribe of Ephraim, so he's the ox. And through Yahushua becomes the lion of Yehudah, because we can do all things through Yahushua who strengthens us. So through Yahushua he receives the spirit to become the lion of Yehudah. So he fulfills those 4 like that. And I'm saying all of that because how interesting that in chapter 4 we see that he became like an ox because he was eating grass. But then in Daniel 7 we see that instead of an ox it says a lion. So we see a connection between the ox and the lion, which is the connection of the last, who comes genetically as an ox but spiritually as a lion to become the king, the Melech Gadol. So interesting that we see when Yahweh says that he is the one that places the lowest of men, whomever he chooses on the king, on the kingdom, on the throne. We see that he talks about Nebuchadnezzar becoming like an ox, like the prodigal son. But in Revelation 7, he was like a lion, because the last comes as the Lion of Yahudah, who will become the king of the world. So I find it interesting how it says ox here and then lion on Daniel 7. And in Isaiah, we read that the lion, in the next life, the lion will eat grass like an oxen. So confirms this. That could be taken as a prophecy for this moment, because Nebuchadnezzar as the king was like the lion, but he became an ox when he started eating grass. So that shows how lions will start eating grass like oxen. And once again shows how the oxen will become like the lion, or the lion like the oxen, since he will eat grass. So that very hour the word was fulfilled concerning Nebuchadnezzar. He was driven from men and ate grass like oxen. His body was wet with the dew of heaven, till his hair had grown like eagle's feathers, and his nails like birds' claws. And at the end of the time, so we just saw, he had eagle feathers, which were plucked off later on, which also is connected with the fact that Lucifer has been like an eagle, and his wings are about to be taken off, and that's why he's going to fall like a serpent. Well, in Revelation 12 is a dragon that flies and then falls like a serpent. So, and at the end of the time, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted my eyes to heaven, and my understanding returned to me. So when he finally lifted his eyes to heaven, not necessarily in the literal sense, but in the spiritual, when he prayed, when he recognized that there is someone above, that is when his understanding returned. So look how scripture pretty much shows that a human is known by his understanding, because he became like a beast. And then he became a man once again when he received understanding. So look at how important it is to understand. Understanding is huge. Is what makes us human. So when one doesn't understand something, it's because he's lacking something from the spirit of truth, which is Yahushua, the man. I'm not saying that if you don't understand anything, you're an animal. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that that is the reason why we must seek understanding. We must look into scriptures in order to understand things. Because if we don't, we will act like animals, because we won't understand what we are doing. When we read scriptures, we understand what we should do. And when we do it, we understand why we should do it. So we get extra understanding when we actually act upon what Yahweh tells us to do. So that's why also the first and the last, Yahushua came as the light to give wisdom. The last comes and grabs that light to show understanding. That's why first and last, wisdom and understanding. That's why the first is the light, like the light of the sun, which was created on the fourth day. That's why Yahushua came on the fourth millennium. The last comes on the sixth millennium. That's why he's called the Son of Man, because he is the one who comes to bring understanding to the wisdom that Yahushua made well accessible for all of us. So, and at the end of time, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted my eyes to heaven, and my understanding returned to me. So huge is understanding. And I blessed the Most High, and praised and honored him who lives forever. So if him lives forever, that means that his own God, which he mentioned earlier, Baal, Lord, doesn't live forever, because he's going to the lake of fire eventually, which is the second death, the true death. So, and at the end of the time, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted my eyes to heaven, my understanding returned to me, and I blessed the Most High. So look at that. When a person understands, that person realizes that he should bless the Most High. A person that doesn't bless the Most High, that doesn't accept that there is a Most High, that doesn't believe in him, that doesn't respect him, that doesn't listen to him, that doesn't seek his presence, that person is acting like an animal who doesn't understand what he or she is doing. But when we get understanding, we understand that we must look up and give thanks to him who allows us to look, to see, to understand. So, and I blessed the Most High and praised and honored him who lives forever. For his dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom is from generation to generation, which is the kingdom that will be established at the end of times when Babel falls, like it is represented by this chapter. Like we see in Revelation 17 and 18, pretty much the great whore of Babylon being destroyed so that the true kingdom may be finally established, even though it's going to be established through the two witnesses during the first 3 years and a half. But then we have to go to the prepared place for a while and then come back in the world of Armageddon and everything, every enmity pretty much from the people of the world. So all the inhabitants of the earth are reputed as nothing. He does according to his will in the army of heaven. What I just mentioned, all the inhabitants of the earth who don't respect him are reputed as nothing. And that's why the army of heaven in Revelation 19, Armageddon, will come to destroy all of those who are nothing, because they want to be nothing, because they believe that everything came from nothing. So they will go to nothingness, in the sense that they, well, believe in the Big Bang. They don't accept Yahweh, so they won't receive anything because they believe in nothing. So, and all the inhabitants of the earth are reputed as nothing. He does according to his will in the army of heaven. He does according to his will regarding the angels also. Army of heaven. And among the inhabitants of the earth, he does whatever he wants. And that's what we need to understand. Instead of fighting him, we should get on his side. And then he will tell us what is going to happen, why is going to happen, and why it should happen that way, instead of whatever we may think that things should be like. So, all the inhabitants of the earth are reputed as nothing. He does according to his will in the army of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth. No one can restrain his hand. No one can restrain his hand. Or say to him, what have you done? Exactly. They shouldn't, but people try. But once they finally see the truth, they will know how dumb it was to tell Yahweh why. Or why don't you do things differently? Or whatever people say to him or expect of him. No one can restrain his hand. He does whatever he wants. His hand is the last, just like the first is the arm. The arm and the hand are one in Yahweh, but he revealed himself in two different times. One as the arm, to gather, to forgive, and the other one as the hand, to harvest, but also to punish the evil ones. And interestingly, no one can restrain his hand. No one can restrain the second coming. No matter, even if nobody believes in it, nobody knows about it. That's why he comes as a thief in the night. That's why Yahushua said that he's coming when nobody expects him. Nobody can restrain his hand and what he is coming to do. Yahweh through his hand. The true doctrine, people will hate it, will try to restrain it, but nobody will be able. Even though they will even kill him, nobody will be able to restrain the kingdom from manifesting, because by that time when they kill him, it would have been already established. So no one can restrain his hand or say to him, what have you done? What have you done? Like it is written also that if the king says something, nobody can tell him, what have you done? Nobody can tell the king anything regarding what he says, thinks, or does. So if that is true for a king of flesh and blood, more so with the king who created all flesh and blood. So no one can restrain his hand or say to him, what have you done? What have you done? Everything that he does is perfect. But people cannot see how perfect it is yet, because they don't have the light to see. They don't want it. And some are walking with a different light, which is actually darkness. Yet they don't know because they have become blinded by it. Verse 36. At the same time, my reason returned to me. So understanding and reason. Once he understood, he had reason. Like when you understand something, you will be found correct regarding your reasoning. But if you don't understand what you're talking about, you will be wrong regarding whatever you talk about. So at the same time, my reason returned to me. And for the honor of my kingdom, my honor and splendor returned to me. So all of this was written because he received reason. So he wrote it. So it was for the honor of Yahweh and also for the honor of the people who were on his kingdom that he received again the understanding to control it, to rule over it. So, and for the honor of my kingdom, my honor and splendor returned to me. This is also interesting. Well, I want to say a lot of things here, but I'll try to say it in a nutshell. The second coming, the witness like Moshe, he's coming as the son of man, like the prodigal son. He's coming to become the king. But when he fell, like the prodigal son, in the false doctrine, when he was born in the flesh with sin and other things of this world, he pretty much came without that kingship, becoming the lowest of men. So it is interesting also that Adam he sinned at the very beginning of creation, which would last 7,000 years. 7,000 years as the 7 years that were given to Nebuchadnezzar to be an animal. On the sixth day of creation, Yahweh made humans. So during all the previous days, there were no humans. So that's why during the previous 6,000 years, humans have acted not like humans. For a couple 2,000 years like animals. Before that, even less than that when it came to understanding of the spirit and other things. So just like Nebuchadnezzar for 7 years became an animal, but at the end of it became a man and received the kingdom and the splendor and the honor, is kind of showing like humanity, which through Adam fell in sin, acting like animals. But at the end of it, the Son of Man comes, whom the Jews believe is the reincarnation of Adam, who reincarnated as David and then reincarnated as the last. So that would be interesting, the connection between Adam and the second coming. Because through the sin, humanity became like lower than what Yahweh wanted them to be. But then by eating the tree of life, at the end, will receive manhood again through the Son of Man. And once the Son of Man dies for it, he will receive kingship and the splendor and the honor that he once had in the presence of the Most High, which he lost when he entered the earth to preach, for instance, when it comes to for the first 3.5 years. But for those 7 years that have to happen as the week of Daniel, the last week of Daniel. So he will come not as a king, hated by the whole world, as the lowest of all, and then he will manifest at the last of the 7 years in Har Megiddo as the king to destroy the enemies, and then in Judgment Day as the king before all humans that ever lived on human history that were resurrected at that moment. So after 7,000 years, like the 7 years of Nebuchadnezzar, the man will receive kingship over all creation. And the king that Yahweh sent will get back his honor, the honor that Yahweh gave him, and even more through Yahushua. So at the same time, my reason returned to me, and for the honor of my kingdom, my honor and splendor returned to me. My counselors and nobles resorted to me. I was restored to my kingdom, and excellent majesty was added to me. Like I just said, he's going to be given what he left with Yahweh in order to come and get the sheepfold. He will receive it back once he dies. But not only that, he will receive even more through what Yahushua did 2,000 years ago. So Yahweh will give the last and the 144,000 the double portion. Whatever they lost through sin, whatever Satan took from them, all the honor that Israel received when we received the Torah and when David was ruling over the kingdom, and a lot more. So I was restored to my kingdom. Also the fact that he is the king of Babylon, like the fact that the last comes in the middle of the spiritual Babylon in which this world is. Being the king, but seen as an animal when it comes to the people, and even the Jewish people, because the Jewish people see Gentiles as animals. So since the last is coming, according to society nowadays, as a Gentile, to the Jews he will be an animal. So very interesting how Yahweh is doing things, and how he, the Almighty, can show us through one chapter a representation of the evil Lucifer who's fallen, and the righteous Michael who's coming, but through the false doctrine and part of the whole mission that Yahweh gave him, he had to fall while being a human, like the prodigal son. And that's why the voice fell, like the prodigal son, like we just read. The voice that announced what would happen ended up falling. Why? Because he had to become a man eventually, after living like an animal according to the beliefs of society, and sin, of course, like the prodigal son. I hope all of that is clear, because it is very important and very interesting how those two interpretations can be taken from this one chapter. So, an excellent majesty was added to me. Now, I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven. So he started saying that he had a different Elohim, Lord, the God of this world, the God that everybody worships. But at the end, he realized that he wasn't it, that he had to worship the only one, the true mighty one, the King of majesty, the King of heaven. So now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven. So he was worshiping a subject to the King of heaven. Now he realized that there is a king in heaven, so he should worship that king instead of worshiping a subject of the king, like people do when they worship whatever doctrine they give them, or God, as they call them. So I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven, all of whose works are truth, all of whose works are truth, and his ways justice. And those who walk in pride, he's able to put down. And those who walk in pride, like he was doing, and he became humble, that's why he's able to tell us that Yahweh is able to put down anybody who walks in pride. That's why we have to be careful regarding that, like the leaven of the Pharisees. Those who walk in pride, he is able to put down. So I'm going to leave it here. Well, that's where the chapter ends, so we're going to leave it here. But now I'm going to go and see questions. So let me see. Let me see. Okay, AJB says, does the tree go through the earth, perhaps through the universe? No, I already explained that. Not exactly sure about what you mean, since then you write quantum physics. But no, that is not the point. It's not like it's talking about quantum physics. It's pretty much what I explained earlier. It's clear since we got the interpretation from Daniel. Then he says the tree is a spiritual tree and physical tree. The tree was a dream that I used to show with only that part the shape of the earth. That was the point of the whole explanation that I did. But according to the interpretation of the dream, the tree is Nebuchadnezzar, and like I said, also represented the kingdom itself of Babylon. And the branches wouldn't be planets. The branches would be different realities, although I already, well, the planets are connected to the angels, yes, but they are not places where the angels live. They are pretty much like heavenly bodies from this reality of matter through which the angels influence this reality. So no, the tree is not the holistic galaxy, because Daniel said the tree is Nebuchadnezzar, a person, a king, not a galaxy, and it had to do with this world, not the galaxy. Are there watchers still here on their bloodlines or their bloodlines? No, the watchers are not here. Well, there are watchers who are still watching, but the watchers who fell, which are the ones I think you were talking about, the watchers who fell during the time of Noah, they were trapped in prison, and they will be allowed to come out during the end times to destroy the earth. But when you say bloodlines, I'm guessing you're meaning their children. And in that sense, yes, there are children of watchers on the earth. What does wed with the dew of heaven mean? Well, in the literal sense, the point was that he wouldn't have a home. He wouldn't be a human being. He would be living with the animals, and therefore, if it rained, he would get wet. So even though it's very simple, that's the point, the literal sense of what that meant. Spiritually, we see that the dew of heaven is pretty much the early rain, the former rain. So it represents the teaching of Yahushua. So the truth, the wisdom would come upon him until he would actually get understanding of who is the water of life, who is the true life, and the true mighty one, of course. Then it says, when the first and last will be one, Mikael and Malach will never exist, as Malach will never exist again. Well, yeah, he will exist, but in a different reality. He will exist, but with exalted and added honor than what he had before as a Malach. Like we just saw, and I explained with Nebuchadnezzar, he received what he had previously and more. So Mikael will receive the power and all the things that he had as an angel before he became man. But then through what he did as a man, accepting Yahushua, he will receive even more by becoming one with Yahushua. But since there are different realities, like I have said, the one, first and last, depending on the reality in which people may be, that's whom they will see. So, for instance, if, well, the many will see Mikael, the few will see Yahushua while looking at the same person, if that makes sense. Because there will be two different realities, or another way of explaining it, Yahushua will remain in heaven, the last on earth, so that heaven and earth remain and continue existing. I hope that's a little bit clearer. How to write beast in Hebrew. It appears different ways. Chai is a living being. Chai, a living entity. If you're talking about, well, in here it would appear in Hebrew, but let me see for a second. I mean in Aramaic. Like I said, Chai is one of those. Let me see if I find a different one. And, well, Behemah normally is translated as animal. Behemah. Chai normally is translated as beast, which is interesting because you perhaps have seen people, for instance, the rapper Drake, And I'm just saying that one because with that, what I'm about to say can be seen easily. But there's a lot of people that use the word high as a pendant on their chains around their neck. And high is this. High, beast or living entity. So they use it, Jewish people use it, and some people who are not Jewish, but just because Jewish people use it, some people use it. And this is also translated as beast. So that's kind of a sign that they worship the beast. Because just like some Christians have the cross because they worship the cross, others have high on their chains because they worship the beast. High is beast. Some believe that this is a hey, so they think is Yah, but that would be if this was a hey and the other way around. So my point is, you might see this on people, and some might think that it says Yah because this letter is very close to the letter hey, but this is actually beast, Chai. So let me see other questions. Wondering, is it true that Yahweh's hold on. That Yahweh's name can be spelled both as Yahweh and nope. The later being enunciated as a Yud. Oh. I'm not sure I understood what you're saying, Joey. I don't know if you mean like yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure I understand what you're saying, but maybe what you mean or what you read means is the fact that the letter Yud, well, for instance, in the name Chava, it is said that her name was Chaya, the mother of the living, Chaya, which comes from Chai. Chaim is life, Chaim, plural, because there are two lives, this one and the eternal one. But the people who are as animals, they only have one, so they worship Chai, the beast, the Elohim of this reality in which there's one life. So when Chaya, Eve, listened to the serpent, her youth became elongated and it touched the earth because her reality went down to a lower reality, and therefore her name went from Chaya to Chava because her Yud became a Vav. That is a different letter. Now, if because of that, perhaps you read something along these lines of what I understand you are saying, it would be a saying that Yahweh, the Vav could be changed with a Yud, and therefore will be Yah. But actually, well, I believe I could explain something very important with that. But yeah, regarding the pronunciation is what I didn't understand what you're saying, because there's one pronunciation, the one that he gave us through Moshe, Yahweh. But when we think about this that I just said regarding Chaya and Chava, it is interesting that I have always said that Yahweh is a representation of the first and last. Yah is the first, Weh is the last, the second coming. Interestingly enough, the Vav represents the Son of Man, who is the last. The Yud, the arm of Yahweh who came down to give us the Spirit. So Yahushua is set apart. That's why he would be represented by the Yud, which is set apart from the line over which we write. So the Yud and the Hey represent Yahushua, who is set apart at the right hand of the Father above in the heavens, like the Yud The second coming would be the second coming of Yah. However, through Mikael, who would become the prodigal son, therefore he would sin, and that would become Avav, like all men, like Chaya, who became Chava, because her Yud went down to a lower reality. So Yah would be first and last of Yahweh, but the second syllable would be We with a Vav, because of what the second coming would come to do. I hope that is clear. So it's very interesting, because, well, I pretty much was able to find a teaching with this that you said, but I'm not sure regarding what you said or the pronunciation that you mentioned. So the only connection that I see is that I just said regarding the Yud becoming a Vav in the name Yahweh, because he represents the second coming, when he would fall like Eve did when she became Chava instead of Chaya. Hope that's clear. And it says, apart from the 6 sides of the cube, what other relationship exists with the cube and the last one? Well, it is the cube is connected with Metatron, who is Mikael. The cube represents this reality, the 3 dimensions, well, and the 4th dimension of time, which he comes to break through, pretty much like opening the cube through Yahushua, who is the door to take us through that door to a different reality. Also, the New Jerusalem is presented as a cube, and the last is the New Jerusalem. So through the last, the New Jerusalem comes down. So that's what I mean. That's why the name of the New Jerusalem will be the same name that is given to the last, the title, Yahweh Sidkenu, as written in Jeremiah. So when it comes to the cube, also he comes to destroy Samael, who is Saturn, who is also represented by a cube. So it would be as saying like that the cube of Yahweh comes to destroy the cube of Satan. The word or the world of Yahweh comes to destroy the world of Satan, that is attached to time, represented by Kronos, which is Saturn. So he comes to break time. Well, the beast will break time, but the last, through that breakage of time, will take the chosen few to eternity. And perhaps there will be other things with the cube, but yeah, right now those are the ones I remember. Then it says, people with schizophrenia, will they heal recognizing Yahweh? Have you helped? Hold on, because other verses enter, and have you helped through Yahweh and Yahushua someone like that with schizophrenia? No. Or yeah, what they call schizophrenia, no, I haven't. Although it's very close to possession. So some who are possessed are called schizophrenic. So I'm not sure how to answer the question, but somebody who claims to be schizophrenic, no, I haven't been able to help. I mean, I haven't known somebody in order to help them. Now, the question, will they heal recognizing Yahweh? I do believe they would. But we need to understand also that there are 2 things. First, the will of Yahweh, because depending on the actions of the person, what that person actually deserves. Even through Yahushua, who gives us something which we didn't deserve, but through our repentance and recognition of his will and Yahushua's actions, we get that which we didn't deserve, the forgiveness of sins. So we become worthy through him. But there are people who do not submit to Yahweh, his kingship, who do not accept really Yahushua, and that is a huge problem, because that means they cannot receive healing. So one has to be the will of Yahweh for that person, and second, that person has to have faith that his will is mercy for him or her. So his will and faith, very important. We see that Yahushua couldn't perform many miracles in Galilee because they did not have faith. So Yahushua couldn't do something that is huge, but he couldn't do it because they didn't have faith, not because he didn't have the power, because they didn't have faith in his good will. So they remain in a bad state. So two things have to happen, which pretty much become one. The will of the Father, which becomes favorable through Yahushua. That's why the people have to have faith in Yahushua to receive the favor from the Father to be healed. So the faith in Yahushua will make Yahweh go from the throne of justice to the throne of mercy and have mercy on us, having a good will. But many times people don't accept the truth. They don't want to. They refuse. They are angry with the Most High for whatever they have experienced, not knowing that they themselves brought upon themselves either in a previous life or their parents or their own actions. So, we must know and ask the Father if it is His will, because we also see in scriptures that nobody can come to the Father unless Yahushua takes him to him. And no one can know the Son unless the Father reveals the Son to him. So, that's why I started saying the will of the Father and then the faith of the person. Because if it is not the will of the Father, the person won't believe in the Son, because they won't be able to see the Son. So they won't believe, and if they don't believe, they won't receive the miracle. But that belief must come from the Father according to His plan and what He has seen in that person. So it is all connected. That's why we must ask for the mercy of the Father and His good will, and believe in the Son for His will to be fulfilled on us, and expect that same attitude in other people. In order for us to be able to help them, would be for them to believe like we do in Mashiach. And that is most of the time the problem. Is wisdom the same as understanding? No. Or do we need to seek understanding as this is the truth? No, neither. Wisdom and understanding are two different things. Yahushua brought wisdom. The last brings understanding. Wisdom is the first pillar. Understanding the second pillar. We first receive wisdom as a gift from the Most High, like an idea that you have, that you receive all of a sudden, like a light bulb that shines in your brain, and all of a sudden you have an idea to do something, or you receive knowledge or wisdom regarding a certain thing. But then, after you receive that flash of light, which would be the wisdom, Yahushua the light, the truth, then you have to dissect that which you received in different parts, separated in your mind, to be able to understand it in a better way. So you separate what you received as wisdom, and then you come to understand how to practice it or do whatever you received. So it is like getting a teaching that is wisdom, and then when you think about it, you get to understand it. So once you received the teaching and thought about it and took it to heart, then you get the understanding of that wisdom, which was the teaching pretty much. So they are different. One may receive a teaching but may not understand it, because he only received the first part. That's why Yahushua came. He would speak in parables, and not even his disciples would understand. They were receiving wisdom but not understanding. So they're different. The beast in Revelation is talking about the new creation. The beast in Revelation is talking about the new creation, creature in Christ, created through the anointing. Why you don't worship it or the number of His name? Is it please? I'm gonna try. Well, the beast in Revelation is talking about the new creation creature. That part, to me, makes no sense. So I'm not understanding what you're saying. The beast is Satan manifesting through humans. One human in particular. In Revelation, the beast is the world government and the world leader. That is the beast who rebels against the Most High and kills the two witnesses. So, not sure what you're saying regarding the new creature in Christ, created through the anointing. Why you don't worship it, or the number of his name, is it please the Father that all the fullness, or fullness, I'm not sure, of the, do you worship this? Okay, I think I am kind of understanding. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm trying to read and understand, but it's kind of hard. I'm not sure if what you are saying is that the beast and the image of the beast is worshiping Yahushua, because the scripture says not to worship an image, and Yahushua is the image of the Father. I'm not sure if that's what you're getting to, which would be wrong, because yes, Yahweh told us not to worship an image made by hands. Yahushua is the stone that was cut off the mountain without human hands. That's why he came through a virgin. He's the image that he himself made, so that we don't worship an image made by humans or Satan. Also, because the image of Yahushua is not how he looks. His image is what he did and does. That is his image. The way he acts shows us how the Almighty acts. The way he talks, what he taught us, is what Yahweh teaches. That is the point. So that is the image that we must follow in order to see who the Father is, which is completely different to Satan creating an image made of flesh so that the world may fall for it, thinking that is the Messiah, because he will look just like the image that people see, thinking it is Messiah, and they call Jesus. So I'm not sure if that's what you meant from everything that you wrote, but like I always say, we need to take the scriptures and not take out of context the verses. We need to take everything in context. So the whole scriptures, to be able to understand every key point. Hopefully that helped some. That's why the verse says, make no graven image. Humans didn't make Yahushua, but humans did make Jesus. So Jesus is the problem, not Yahushua. Then you said, Yahushua said, apart from what he has told me. He who? Who's that he? And the way you write it, I'm guessing perhaps you're talking to Hebrew Israelites, because I have heard that pronunciation mostly from Hebrew Israelites, which I don't agree with that pronunciation. I kind of understand why they pronounce it like that, but I don't agree with it. Yeah. And yeah, the way you write it, I don't know how to pronounce it. Yaheshawa. Yaheshawa. Yeah, it's kind of weird. Or Yahushai. Yud Hey. There is no final vav. There's only one vav. And that is maybe the problem with the first question. There's only one vav, which has the shape close to what the yud would look if you were to write the yud all the way down. There's only one vav. There are 5 letters which have a final form. None of those is the vav. So not sure what you say final vav, but yud hey vav shin ayin. That is the name of Mashiach, and it's pronounced Yahushua. And the vav doesn't sound as a vowel, as a consonant. It sounds as a vowel, as it is confirmed also by the historian Josephus. I'm not sure how they call him in English, but Josepho. And he said, he wrote that the name of the Father are 4 vowels, so the 4 letters are pronounced as vowels. And And not only through that do we know that. We know that by the fact that the name Yeshayahu is Yeshayahu and not Yeshayav. If it's Yahu, is because it is pronounced as a vowel, not as a consonant. So Yeshayahu, Netanyahu, Hizkiyahu, Yirmyahu, Yahushua, Yahweh. So we have a lot in scriptures to come to that conclusion. You're very welcome. Then let me see. Meredith says mental diseases are spiritual diseases instead of mental. In these cases, doctors say it is something wrong in the mind or psyche, but never says it's man's spirit. So they prescribe drugs for them. Yeah, that's right. And who made the mental? Who made the mind? It was Yahweh. And he can take away reasoning and understanding when he wants, and he also can give it back. So to doctors who do not believe in the spirit, they claim it's physical, but because they only think about the hardware. Yahweh is the one who put the software. So he's the one that can fix any virus in the software, which doctors take as a problem with the hardware. And since they take it as a problem with the hardware, they think that certain things cannot be fixed, or think that a pill will help or suppress certain problems with the hardware. So they don't go to the root of the problem. They try to control whatever problem there is, and that way keep the people slaved to pills and their pharmacies and all of that. So even if we were to call it mental diseases, we know that Yahweh can fix anything. But yeah, most of the time is not hardware, is spiritual. So that's why I said software. So mental diseases are spiritual diseases. In this case, doctors say there's something wrong with the mind or psyche, but never not spiritual. Yeah. Then, yes, because the symptoms are in the body, but the problem is in the ruach. That's right. Then it says, Yahweh Sitkenu. Okay. Joey Travar said, not necessarily Yahushua, which again, like you preach, it's so important to use his proper name and not Jesus. I agree completely with what you were saying. The point that I was making is all of us are following. Is there a literally singular and metaphoric application, all of us individually as well. I understand and agree with what you're saying. It's pronounced. No problem. It's cool. I mean, I'm fine with you bringing up things. The only thing is when I don't understand what you guys are saying, I get a problem with explaining whatever, because yeah. But all good. That's why we do this. So you can ask whatever you guys want. So yeah, that's where we're gonna leave it. Hopefully it was a blessing for you guys, and next week we would see Daniel 5. As you guys can see, Daniel is very important book to understand, because we pretty much see what will happen in the end times in the book of Revelation, explained by Daniel through several historic events.